Hello, everybody. Slange, Maha, and all of that. It's Friday. You see, almost speaking a different language. I'll probably get told off for my pronunciation, though. It's Friday. It's a better way of life. And you've made it to the end of another week. Well done. So there we go. Marianne, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay, I think.
Let's talk about logo designs, right? Because you're in the throes you're in the throes of changing up your company name,
yeah,
etc. And it's going to become 2M Learning and Development.
Dog, 2 seconds.
Yeah, of course you can get the dog. Go on. Lottie. Lottie is one of the 2 show dogs. When I say show dogs, I don't mean like Crufts or anything like that. I just mean that they appear in the background on the show.
She waits until I'm doing something, and then she scratches at the door or she just like taps it. If I don't
let me in. But I was just explaining to people that so changing the business, we'll probably go into that, the reasons for that a little bit as part of this show a bit later on. But you sent me over a design last night, and then that ended up being like to and froing about, where it might go. And we've decided that probably the best thing to do would be to show some of you lot out there what the preferenced designs might be, and then for you to pick them all to pieces. And we might either, Marianne will get even more confused, or we'll have more clarity on the whole situation.
I think that the issue is, and it follows sort of on from last week's podcast, about how and why you're doing business, what your why is, I suppose, and how much of you want there to be in your business, how corporate you want to be. And so I can ask 1,000,001 people probably, and maybe I'll go to an expert on this, but beneath it all is that it needs to be known that it's what I do, as in what I do, I want to come through. And it's really, really difficult, because if you speak to some people like last week when we had Mike on, he's got quite a different approach to business than me. We're financially more successful, but there we go. Yeah. But, I do what I do because I love what I do. And it's really difficult then when somebody will try and get you to change something that you're doing, whether it is your logo, that is part of what you are. I designed mine years and years ago, actually, during COVID, because it reflected what I did. And now I'm sort of changing what I'm doing. I feel like I want that to come through.
Yeah. You've got to be happy with it, is what you're saying. If we take last week's conversation, there would be an argument there that says it's not about you, it's about your audience.
Yeah.
Right. So that was kind of last week's conversation, which is actually you need to ditch whatever you want, and you need it to be whatever people want it to be in order to understand what it is that you do, so that you become more successful. It's very hard in business to do that, though. It's very hard in business to
there's the people understanding what you do, but it's more learning and development now that I'm looking at, because I don't feel like the training bit actually really shows what I do. In fact, yesterday I responded to a post that somebody said that they'd been scammed by somebody who were going to make sure their stuff was CPD worthy. So there was lots of people on this feed that have been scammed by this particular person, and I was going, oh, this is what I do, but right, and I don't scam people. And this particular person said to me, oh, you didn't explain that this is what you do. You didn't explain it well enough. And I said, well, no, I've sort of just changed, because I'm now realizing there's people out there that don't know what they're doing in terms of their work, or they're scamming people, and people are believing, so they're paying them money. So it's a really, really tricky one, because the other side of what I do is the neurodiversity, and I want to be appealing to people that are neurodivergent. And so things like the text and stuff is really important to me. So some people may say that some of my text selections might be a little childish. Well, childish, maybe in the corporate world, but actually if that appeals to certain other learners, and I have had learners say to me, wow, I really like the text, the fonts you use, which is Cavalloni, because they really liked it. So am I appealing to my potential audience, or I don't know, it's a minefield. And then I just want to go, I'll forget the whole lot and not do it at all.
Oh, that's never an option. Right.
I know.
Harry is our guest today, and Harry is in the world of training as well. So let's bring Harry in to enter into the discussion. Harry, nice to meet you.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Harry Snape. That's a
great name.
Strong name, yeah.
I was literally watching Harry Potter on the weekend. I was like, yeah, this is good. Still tracks well. It's great.
Yeah. we will forget all kind of puns to do with Harry Potter and your name, but well done for having it as a name. That's a great name. Tell us a little bit about you, sir. What is it that you do?
Yeah, so for the past 6 years, I've been running an education business. So it's called FLM Training, and we do apprenticeships, and then we have our commercial arm that also deals with government funding called Fit Asylum. That's the brand that I've really grown over the past 5-6 years. So we deliver government funding courses, PT, massage, and we deliver apprenticeships to the employees in the Northwest area. So we're strictly Northwest based at the moment. And there's a reason for that, but yeah, so we're they're 14 years in. I'm 6 years in terms of operations, but I've been there for quite a while. So,
what got you into it?
Well, weird story really. So I was a sports therapist. I had a clinic in Wigan, in an office building. Great, loved it. Worked at the NHS in the day, did some clients at night time, and then the owners of FLM Training were in the office across the road. And I massaged both owners and the owner's dad, sorted out his back issues, which was great. And then he started talking, like, oh, why don't you get into teaching? I was like, I don't know. Not quite sure about that. I've had a bit of a ropey history with education. I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a go. And here I am 11 years later, still with him. So it was a bit of a walk of fate, should we say.
All right. So the lesson to be learned here straight away is massage other people's egos.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
If you want to get anywhere in business,
literally.
No, I love that. What a great little story. But when you got over actually, let's talk about that. How did they help you get over your past with education?
Yeah, well, so I guess once you see inside the beast, inside the machine, you start to understand how it works, the cogs inside of it. You start to understand all the experience that you've had aren't quite the same viewpoint or perspective you've had when you were younger, particularly for me. So being inside it, learning it, finding out everything from to do with more so apprenticeships, but I can understand just how teaching and works, and I've done different quals and stuff. So understanding it helps you to see the benefits of it, I think. So for me, it's kind of like done a full 180, pardon the song, I've got that in my head now. It just lets you understand, that sort of background on it, and you start to sort of fall in love with it because of the impact it can have on people.
Do you think that's the same for a lot of people, Marianne? That actually, for me, it's the same with things like maths. I really kind of didn't understand. Well, I did understand maths for a long while at school, and then I had a bad teacher that put me off maths, and then I really didn't see the point of maths. I mean, I did enough to get my, GCSE or whatever, but I didn't really start to understand maths until I ran a business, right? I think a lot of people with education don't really see the point of education until they're out of education. Is that fair?
I think you can't sort of know. I don't know. I had a conversation with a friend yesterday. Her son's just in year 11. And so she was saying he was looking at what he was going to do when he finishes. And she said maybe A-levels. And she said he doesn't really know. And she said, well, that's okay. It doesn't matter if you don't know. In fact, actually, it was somebody I taught that I'm friends with now. And I said, it's funny because my son was like the least academic person, struggled at school. And he knows what he wants to do. He knows what he wants to do. And so out of all of his friends, he probably is the only one that knows what he wants to do. And then he said, now they've said that I probably ought to apply for uni, as an option. And I went, oh, right, okay. And he said, I suppose I ought to. But I know that when I look at a lot of people that I teach on the AET, the Award in Education and Training, which, Harry, I know you teach as well, I love it that most of the people that I get on there, they have this light bulb moment that, particularly when I share that I've got ADHD, and I say how knowing and understanding how my brain works, which is ironic because I studied psychology as well, but that was just theory. That's all that was. When I share that, they come up to me quite often and say, I think maybe that I might be, or my son is, or my daughter is, and I'm like, yeah, it's probably highly likely you are. And it's great seeing them reflect back on their past, which I get them to. And that's that light bulb moment of, this is why they're doing it. This is why they're doing it. And I say, but that's why you're so good, because you're doing it with reason. You're not just doing it because it's a job. And I can spot the people that are, and they don't want to be there. They don't want to be there. But they'll say to me, I don't have to be here. So I think you're right. It all just falls into place, and it's almost like you do what you do with a completely different energy, I think. I do wonder with some teachers now, why, I don't know if they're not doing it with the right reason, or whether the system's knocked it out of them. I know my son went to school this morning and said, he's quite funny. He said, he said it's just dead on Monday morning. I said, oh dear, it's not good, is it? He said, yeah. He said, we just know with the teachers how it's going to be. And I said, all right, how's that then? He said, well, we've got this system. Whoever has them for tutor, they know the way the lambs lie in that day and how the teacher's being. He said, I don't know if they just pick that day and just go, I'm going to be in a bad mood today and make life awful for you, or not. He said, but we all pass on the message to each other at the end of each lesson. And I thought, I wonder if these teachers actually know.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Harry, do you live for those light bulb moments?
I think every teacher does and should, really. You see it in the eyes of the student, don't you? Where you're teaching something and go, oh, yeah, I finally understand that where I didn't before. Yeah, I don't teach as much now, but I can understand sort of the idea of it. Yeah, it's quite life changing for a lot of people, isn't it? Even for adults, because we teach a lot of adults and they get that. Like, yeah,
I think particularly a lot of adults, what I see, because I get them to reflect on their childhood and schooling, because a lot of them will say, and you may have seen it, and we've had a conversation about this previously, they'll say that I was a nightmare at school. I'm not being sexist here, but I get a lot of men in their 40s and 50s that will say, yeah, I was a nightmare at school. I was a headache for my teachers.
Yeah.
I made life a nightmare for them. And I said, well, actually, have you ever considered that you were failed? Actually, you were failed because they didn't actually work with you on that.
Yeah, because I would put myself in that category. I would say I was a nightmare at school, and I walked away with 5 GCSEs barely. I'm not even sure how I did that. So I completely understand that perspective. So.
But I would say it's not the child's job to necessarily be motivated to be there. I look now at my son, I think, I wouldn't even want to go back because I hated it. And so then what I do is when I get the adults to look at it, I think they bring to their teaching something quite different to realise. And I always say this to people, when you're teaching as an adult, or you're teaching adults, they carry all of that they, when they were younger, through to being an adult. It hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, it's probably got worse. So being able to teach as an adult, or teaching adults, is just as hard, even harder, maybe.
Yeah, I think it is. And we get a lot of people who come on our courses where they need probably what I would say, additional support, or you can call it whatever you want, basically, but they just need someone to care about them. Yep. So it's like one of the biggest things that we do is just make sure we actually care and support them, probably beyond what most people do. And I think that pays. That has a bigger impact than anything else, I think, because you hear the feedback and you say, well, it was the extra time I had, it was the support I got, it was the feedback that I had. It's because you're right, they're not used to that system because they've been out of it for like absolute decades, some of them. And they're trying to change their life from a career they hate into something that they feel like they love in massage or personal training more specifically. So yeah, just treating them with that little bit of respect of they've had that experience in life and knowing how to
It's
support
not even a lot.
No.
It's not. You know, that's when I look at Maslow's hierarchy. When you look at the things within that are people's needs, they are real stuff. It's real stuff that adults are facing. So, you know, whether it is that they've got something, I don't know, their housing or their financial situation, you know, people say, well, you can't change that. I said, no, you can't change it, but you can either physically or metaphorically put your arm around them and say, what can I do to try and improve this situation for them?
You can try and understand it, is what you can do, and empathise with them, basically.
Very quick little aside: is Maslow out of date now? Just I'm going to be contentious. Is Maslow out of date? Because clearly, at the top of most people's Maslow hierarchy list now is Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah,
before anything else, right?
Phone.
No, that's at the bottom. That's one of the very basic needs, which comes with food and water.
Oh, that's a basic, right? Okay.
That's at the very bottom.
But do things like that? Do they still stand the test of time completely, or do they need like re-looking at, updating? I don't know.
I think the theory behind it stays the same, doesn't it? There are some basic needs that people need in order to get ahead in life or just even feel normal as a human. I think that never changes. The specifics of it kind of vary, really, doesn't it? But they say like Wi-Fi and a phone, that is now essential, isn't it? It's now a basic need. But the fact that people have basic needs in the start is what's important.
Well, I think it's a questionable basic need, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people would actually say, well, it's probably something we think that we basically need. But actually, as human beings, do we really need it? Or actually, is it really quite detrimental to us?
I don't know. Some of it, like with so let's just say the phone one, I always say to people, they can keep their phones on. So at the beginning of the sessions, I'll always say, look, you're adults, you know, we're all here to learn. And I know some people have a different approach to that. But the way I look at it is that we do have phones now. It's the way we live our lives. And if somebody having their phone on means that they're going to be more ready to learn because they're going to be with me in the room, it could be they're waiting for a doctor's appointment. We live in a different world than we once did. So if you know that you're waiting for a doctor's appointment or phone call, and the difference is that if you have your phone off, you're not going to get it. The way I look at it is somebody's probably not going to come to the session, or they're not going to be listening to me properly. So if I can just say to them, yes, you can have your phone on, because I'm not a dictator as well. My kids would say I am, but I'm not really.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right there. I think actually most people these days, if they feel like they could have their phone on, but what you're really saying to them is, I need you to be present for this.
Yeah.
If actually it will help you to have your phone on, to be present, because you're not actually then going to be worried about the fact that your phone's off, then that's great. Clearly, if you sit there on your phone throughout the whole of this, I'm gonna, slap you over the ear with a wet kipper. But there you go. Yeah. I mean,
I think if you put those boundaries in, and Harry, you probably agree, if you put those boundaries in at the beginning, I don't feel I have to start being a dictator to people. And I've heard some people that do say it's my room, it's my rules, and I'm like, fine, but you might not get as much.
I'm going to push Harry. I'm going to push Harry to see whether there's any funny stories here. Have you ever had anybody go through like training and whatever, and you've had to say to them, when you're massaging somebody or whatever, you can't keep checking your phone?
Well, I mean, not really any stories really, because the thing is, what I was probably just going to jump off on there is that if you keep people busy enough, they wouldn't need to check their phones.
Yeah.
Like that's just essential teaching. Like you could have like a pocket watch or like old little games you have as a kid, like you bring into school. If you can't keep the attention of the adults in a certain way, then you've lost the room anyway, regardless of whether the phone's in front of them or not. So I think that's more just about how you teach and what practices you put in place. Like if the lesson's not engaging enough, go back to the drawing board. That's the only thing that I would say on that. We don't really have those stories because it's practical based learning. You can't massage and use your phone. It's just impossible. So, people have to
I bet some people try.
I don't know, though. I wonder, though, because I know adults joke with kids about their phones. However, I wonder if a lot of that is to do with them just probably not being, as you say, interested. Whereas as soon as my son's doing music at college, and that's what he loves doing. Like literally, when it's holidays, he's like, I don't like being on holiday because I want to be there doing what I love doing.
Yeah, and like at high school in standard education, you get told what to learn, don't you? So you're talking about maths earlier, like practical application of maths. If you learn how to apply that in the real world and how to make money, I bet people would listen to that and engage in it. So it's just the fact that the curriculums really are there to appeal to certain, like to the masses, basically, to cover certain topics. But that's not going to be engaging for everyone, and that's what I struggled with as a kid. I just found none of it useful. I'm like that as an adult now. Like if I don't see the use in it, I won't do it. I'll only do what I feel is productive, or someone's explained to me the reason for it, and then I think that's useful to me. So that's just how my brain works, and I really struggle with that in education. So maybe it's just that we need to now adapt the lessons a little bit better for students in education.
I think you'll see the most. I know my sons has said, when I hear the teachers that they have the most success with, it'll be like music, because they'll make it so that it's engaging, or they'll make it so it's relatable. Sports can go one of two ways, because like my youngest said, he's in the bottom set at the moment, and he's, I was in the top set. I got the highest for the bleep test, and he said, but now I feel like I'm being held back by the other kids. And I know when I speak to school, they'll go, oh well, it's just the way it is. And you think, well, how can you expect somebody to be engaged if you're not engaging with them?
Yeah, it's two-way
People
street.
just give up in the end. People will just give up, and it's the same in the workplace, isn't it? I think a lot of employees leave if they don't feel listened to. There's a lot of parallels, I think.
Just your human behavior in general. I think people need to see the value in something to want to keep doing it, even if like you do any kind of role, any workplace. If you don't see the true value in it beyond the money, then you're not going to stick at it. You're not going to be productive. You'll just be a ghost, typing in and doing whatever jobs someone's probably dictating you to do. If you don't see the value in that, or someone's not expressed the value in it, you're not going to buy into it. And that's why a lot of people move and jump around, and they get golden handcuffed a lot of times because they give you 40p per mile, and they give you all these different benefits and bonuses. You feel like, well, I can't leave because I've got 40 annual leave days. You're like, we don't like your job. But yeah, but I get 40 days to spend with my kids. So people start getting golden handcuffed and start working in jobs they don't like for years and years.
It's one of the hardest things about delivering training, the same as one of the hardest things about delivering good leadership or good management, which is that actually it is impossible to get it right. And when I say that, it's impossible to get it right. It's impossible to create a formula that works every time for every person, etc., because everybody is different. A great example of this would be my son's just gone up a year at school. He's in with two teachers who a lot of people would have said they're the worst teachers in the school to have, right? A lot of people don't necessarily find them particularly easy. He's loving it, and he's probably loving it. He has ADHD and autism. He's probably loving it because actually they're quite strict, these teachers, and they are very structured. And for him, that works. Yeah. Right? For other people, that's probably a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. How do you, as someone that provides training, how do you get it as right as you can get it? Because on the one hand, what you've got to do is you've got to have a structure that at least works for it. It needs to work as practically as possible for the whole group, but you can't ignore the individuals in that group as well, and you're not always going to get it right. Is the difference therefore between great training and poor training the fact that you are doing constant kind of feedback loops and constant kind of reevaluation, so you're not just assuming but you are actually knowing whether or not this hits and lands? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, even with adults, so you build a curriculum or scheme of work, whatever you want to call it, but that has to be flexible so it bends and doesn't break. It's your basic structure of what, hey, right, today this is what I need to get done. But that's just a jumping off point. You can do X, Y, and Z from that, but this is what we need to get done. And therefore you would then change and adapt per group. Like I say to the tutors all the time, this is the structure. But if you come to me in the morning and say, I adapted this lesson to do this, I'll be like, great, but why did you do that? Well, because this happened. Like, perfect. Happy days. Like, I'm not going to stand here with a stick and say you need to deliver it this exact same way every single time. You know what I mean? When we sever a snake wand and get them out to do what I need to do. But no, it's not that. It's allowing the tutors to be flexible with the students when they need it, and how that works for them is different. I mean, we are somewhat finding challenges with different adults. We talked about this sort of last week, different varying types of people that comes on courses now. That's becoming harder and harder, which is fine. That's the sort of changing landscape of things. But yeah, every group's different. You have to treat them a different way, and you have to be able to teach differently in different situations. And that's hard, but that is a skill of a teacher.
There you go. Marianne, do you want to say anything on that?
My 2 words are boundaries and respect, I think when I hear, with me who like structure, that it's that just having boundaries. And I look at my youngest, and he's probably every teacher's worst nightmare. However, really good teachers are probably smiling at the things he says and does because they don't fully agree with the way it's done. So they've currently, I mean, we picked the school he goes to because it's less of a dictatorship than the other school up the road, which apparently is doing well, but it wasn't. But my eldest went there and he said it was awful. Nobody was happy, and literally you're ruled with a rod of iron. He wasn't so bad because he's autistic, so he was sort of that end of the scale that he quite liked, like you said, your son. My other son's not. And so 3 days in, he's got a detention already. And I thought, Christ, they've now got a new system where they've got a card and they get strikes on it. So they have strict 3 strikes, and they've got a uniform one and an equipment one. And basically, they just get written on there, whatever it was that they didn't have or do. So walking down the road this morning, and he said, "You'll be pleased to know I've got no strikes yet." I said, "Oh, that's good." He said, "I should have by rights." I thought, "Oh, God." He said, "But I've done a good job at hiding it." I said, "Oh, right, okay."
Gaming the system, isn't it?
And I said, "Right, okay." And I said, "Could you just sort of not just take the equipment in that I've given you, you know?" He said, "Yeah, I forget sometimes, don't I, like that?" And I thought, I've got no defence because that would be me. And so then he said, and then so I was trying to get him to explain the strike system, and then he said the uniform one. I said, "You mean like having your shirt tucked in like it isn't right now?" And he said, "Yeah, it will be by the time I get there." And he said, "Anyway," he said, "I see teachers walking along without their shirts tucked in. They don't get strikes, do they?" I said, "Oliver, just tuck your shirt in, for God." Because I was a teacher and I just feel it, because I also feel, and I see lots of discussions, and Harry, you probably see it as well, on LinkedIn from parents that aren't happy about the way that things are, that they're so strict. And I am there with it. But equally, the other side is I went to a school to go and do a talk on some fundraising. I'm a charity ambassador. And I looked around and there was kids wearing skinny jeans. So whilst measuring trousers to make sure that they meet right on the shoes seems extreme, but where do we stop this? Because before you know it, they do become skinny jeans, and then it becomes about that not learning. I got embroiled in a post the other day that was about black socks, and that people have got other concerns around that, and I absolutely get it. I completely get it, because everybody's got stuff going on. But as I said to Oliver this morning, I understand that you're annoyed about this, Oliver, but it isn't really about your shirt being tucked in. It's about you understanding that when you go into the world of work, you will have to do things sometimes that you don't want to do, and it's there for a reason. So I don't really know what the answer is, because.
But, see, I mean, if you sort of go to that in one sense, obviously, he's not quite understanding the point or the value in what they're asking him to do. So for me, that is the issue a lot of the times, is no one's really sat down and explained to him or done a lesson on, well, the reason we're asking you to do this is because in the workplace, you're going to be asked to do this, or this is the value in this. They just say, tuck your shirt in, pull your socks up, wear black socks. And everyone's like, why black socks? Well, it's never about the black socks. It never has been and never will be about the black socks. It's about giving people the structures and the boundaries, like you say, to go into the real world and go, well, someone's going to ask you to wear black socks, so you're probably going to need to wear black socks. But here's the reason why. Like, just no one does that. I think because they're children, everyone just goes, this is how it's done, this is how it always will be. And then they see teachers not doing it, and they go, well, what, one rule, isn't it? But that makes sense. That's logical.
I think
that's not the reason.
I think some of the issue is that parents aren't taking that on board. So straight away, I sort of said to him, look, it's there for a reason. And I completely understand, when we've had to have conversations about, sometimes you might want to say, you may not agree with what they said. And I do think there are times that he's used as a target now because he's, and I said, it is difficult. I said, but you need to work on ways, which is a really difficult one for me because I had a whole lifetime of being told to shut up. So it's a fine line. And I do think some teachers do need to learn to listen as well. But I also think it's not necessarily just the teachers, it's the organisations they work for, that it's very lazy behaviour management now. Mm-hmm. In some schools, a lot of schools now, it's quite
surely lazy. A lot of this stuff is just historical, isn't it? I mean, it's going to take so long for this to filter down and change, because even if it changes at individual level with teachers and trainers, the hierarchies above and the history above that's the bit that's going to take the time to change. And we're such a cross-generational society now in work and education. I mean, we're getting to a point where we're going to have 5 generations at work. Mad, right? And that spans people who were just told, do it.
Yeah.
Shut up, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't question, right? All the way through to, well, hey, man. Why? And of course there's going to be this tension there. It's obvious that there's going to be this tension because it's so diverse in terms of the landscape now, right? But it ultimately, as you say, Harry, it comes back down to better education on everything, and really communication as well. Communicating. We now have to, because of that, we've now got to communicate everything, right?
And respect. It's that respect thing again, though. If I've heard I wrote a program that was aimed really at people that have been trainers for years, because there's many people that have been doing it for years, and I aimed it at some of it for them, saying, yes, okay, you've done this, you've done that, and that's fine, that worked then, but the fact is now you have to take on different approaches, because legally you cannot say certain things. Equality and diversity, irrespective of whether you believe that ADHD or autism or whatever you believe in or don't, tough, quite frankly, that's not the way it is now. And so it's about respect being there. And I think that's younger people respecting the older generations, but also older generations respecting that you can't do things the way they've always done, because that's not how it is now.
No, definitely. And there's this whole argument about critical thinking. So obviously that's a bit of a buzzword, particularly with like the Ofsteds of the world. So we expect our students to understand how critical thinking works, which is to basically see another side of the argument, like for online safety, for example, social media, fake news and all that kind of stuff. I won't go into that, but if they expect the students to understand that not every opinion's right, then when we start questioning the teachers and the rules in schools, and we go, why are you questioning us with the teachers? Yeah, well, you're teaching me critical thinking. You're expecting me to debate in communication. But you're not giving me the space and the floor to do it. It's just a little bit ironic, isn't it, in a way? So I think we all just need to get better at communication, like Graham said. But create, so being a teacher is about creating an environment, a specific environment to which you want to cultivate some kind of learning experience. So why can't you have debates? Why can't you have structured, organized environments as a teacher where you say to the students, these are the rules for the year, this is why, what's your thoughts? You're not going to change the rules, but it doesn't matter. I think sometimes people, when they understand it, they'll buy into it, and that works with staff and students alike, humans basically.
Absolutely.
So within that as well is part of the problem that we've still got too many people teaching or training who don't go to teaching and training ready to learn.
Yeah.
Tell people stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are out there telling people stuff, and that's
I'll tell you stuff.
Calling it a course.
It's never going to be effective, which is why e-learning has its limitations, because essentially you're just telling people stuff, but you're not actually. I know that, again, Harry, you'll have experienced this. Is that when I spoke to the lady yesterday, she did her teacher training with me, and she said, but if you do it via e-learning, you're never going to be able to get all of those rich experiences that you shared with us about what it is to teach. You just miss those things. You miss the opportunity to say, what did you do when that happened? How did you deal with that? That you just never going to get from e-learning, and for everybody else in the room.
Yeah, it goes back to that argument of relevancy again. Like, so we do e-learning, but we do hybrid. So we do it in classroom stuff, and we get our tutors to be people who are actually in the industry working right now, because most of the time in the classroom, it is answering those questions. It's like, oh yeah, but what do you do as a PT when this happens, or blah blah blah. And you're like, well, if they just had e-learning and watched a couple of webinars, they wouldn't get that experience, and therefore they wouldn't learn the relevancy of it, therefore the value in it, and they wouldn't be able to apply it. So it's the same in all education.
Does it scare you? I don't know if that's the right word. I'm fearful for the future, because so many organisations are opting for that cheaper option of going down the e-learning route. And like you said, I think it's got its place, but I think if you don't give people the opportunity to learn face to face, whether that is on the internet as well, because I understand, in terms of traveling and stuff, if you don't give people that option, well, they're not giving it. My husband said at the weekend that where he works, he's an engineer, and I think he's to do with fire safety or something. And he said when the alarm goes off, people come outside, he'll question them over stuff, and they won't have known what that particular sound for the alarm is. However, they've done their e-learning. But it's because actually he said you can pass it without actually doing it all. Well, now we've got an issue here, because actually if people are given the option, we're probably mostly going to accept the easy option, aren't we? Yeah. However, in reality, if you asked people, would you prefer to do it face to face? I bet they would say yes, because they'll learn more.
I'd be interested, actually. Harry, did you see last week's podcast at all?
I didn't. No.
Right. Okay. So just to set the scene, we had somebody on last week who had a successful e-learning business, right? Sold it for millions.
Okay.
Right. Wasn't interested in e-learning. Didn't even like to not his.
Didn't agree with e-learning.
Didn't even agree with e-learning. Right. Created an e-learning business, scaled it. Yep. What he focused on in creating that e-learning business is giving people what they want it as e-learning, as opposed to creating what he thought e-learning should be. Same principle that he has with the rest of his businesses. Now that was quite interesting in a way, right? Because I think there were elements of what he was saying that were really, really fruitful. Like one of the things that he was doing, he said, oh, too many people's e-learning, it's too long and whatever. So he made everything really bite-sized. I think because that's what he does with his video stuff and whatever as well. He's grown his YouTube channel to, millions of viewers or whatever, right? And one of the reasons he's done that is because he'll have like oh, you should watch this, and then it will be short and it will make the point really quickly. And I can see how that transfers over into e-learning to really make the points and whatever. Yeah. So I can see why he knows that, but I wondered while I was listening to that, and then I was listening to this conversation as well, is part of the problem that we call it e-learning? Because for me, in a way, it's almost like stuff that you do when you learn online is just like trying to get information in. It's not about making you understand that information or put it within context, right? So I'd almost want to rename it sort of like brain dump, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And so, interestingly, you touched on a point there that we're kind of going back and forth with a little bit with Ofqual, like regulators and stuff, awarding bodies, which is something called guided learning hours. Now, for people who don't really know that, is touch points where the lesson is guided by a tutor. So what you just expressed there basically is e-learning is like an online theory dump, but without the guided aspects of it, there's no real learning. So that's why e-learning or online learning, whatever you want to call it, is not classed as guided learning hours in the eyes of the Ofqual and Ofsted, and absolutely fair enough, because there's no tutor or teacher to guide them, to show how to apply it, to actually, and then also to check that they've even learned anything, because that's like
how do you feel then? Because I've got a real issue with the fact that now people can do their AET. So they can do their level 3 and they can do it via e-learning. And I have a massive issue with that, because in order to teach that, I think different awarding bodies, I'm with Highfield. So if I were to have somebody in my centre teaching, I've got a PGC, so that's not a problem. But they would have to be a level 4 or above. Yeah. And yet, if they were to do it via e-learning, no teacher. How does that even work?
Well, I see. So that's the thing about, it's different like thing about regulation in the industry with awarding bodies, because technically, if you read the like qual specification, whatever it may be, it'll say like 30 hours guided learning. So basically, whoever's not doing it in front of a teacher, that could be online, it could be webinars and stuff, but with a teacher, they're actually breaking regulatory rules.
But they're allowed to,
but no one cares. So
no, and this is the problem. This is the problem.
That's
now.
where it comes down to it.
You know, that is the problem, because there's lots of blind eyes turned to things when it comes down to the money bit. And I'm now having to sort of look at what I'm doing, because, and sadly, there's not the work. And I'm not going to say the money. I suppose work does come down to money, because organisations aren't investing in their learners doing it in that face-to-face way, which obviously costs money, because you've got to pay a decent trainer, you know, in order to do that. So I'll find that individuals will come to me and they don't question the pay and how much it costs. I find that organisations that are regulated by Ofsted, generally speaking, so prisons, fire service, they won't quibble, and they will choose someone like me, because the person that's managing their department likely is from, they've probably got a learning and development qualification or a teaching qualification. Yeah. And yet other organisations literally aren't bothered. And I sort of feel like there should be a clause in there that if you are taking somebody on that's got a training qualification, it should stipulate in there whether it was an e-learning one, because the quality that you're going to get from that trainer surely is going to be massively different than it is if you're going to get somebody that's done it where they've had, like you said, those guided learning hours, which is the difference between it being good or okay and excellent. I mean, I know that I will only ever do e-learning stuff if I know that it's going to be like a refresher, or I've already got a good base knowledge there, and the program has it where I can speak to somebody.
Yeah. No, that's right. And I think, again, with the regulation stuff, it's a lot of people won't kind of clamp down on stuff like that, so you'll never really know. So that'll take a big educational piece for everyone to really understand what guided learning hour is for a start, and also what being taught by a tutor is and what not being taught by a tutor is. I think we're asking the rest of the world to understand something that's probably take quite a while for them to understand. In some
well, for them to understand, but does anybody care now?
Well, I was going to say that's it. The thing is, it's like a lot of things. It's going to come down to money, right? And it will come down to money until the poo hits the fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? When the poo hits the fan, people will turn around and go, oh dear, why's this happened? Let's investigate. Oh, we've been doing it that way. Actually, if we'd been doing it that way, this wouldn't have happened. We better start doing it that way. That's always the case these days.
Yeah, can I give you like a practical example of that? So we work with a top gym chain. I won't name them. So they have their own academy, right? Their academy is all online. Not guided learning hours. They're not interested because their awarding body is also not interested because they put in a lot of starts every year. We work with them also because we do classroom-based learning and ours is funded. So they know from us, and they've told us very specifically that the quality of PTs that we give them are far higher than what their own academy would produce. So their managers on the ground floor are coming to us and asking for our students, even though they've got their own academy. Now, what I would just say back to that academy is, well, why didn't you just raise your standards and do that? But then go back to the argument of, well, why would they? What's the value in it for them?
Yeah.
Well, does a lot of this come down, therefore? I know this sounds completely unrelated, but I would argue that it is. So the gym that I go to is a big gym, and they've been doing lots of work, and we've been very, very disrupted with it all. They haven't given compensation to their members, and there's been a lot of annoyance along the way. I did complain, and they've reimbursed to a degree, which kind of has silenced me really. But yeah. One of the guys that I go to the gym with as well, he had got frustrated and ended up sort of losing his rag with somebody that was on the desk, largely because the person that was behind the desk just said, if you don't like it, just use the gym up the road, you're allowed to use that one.
Brilliant. Customer service at its best.
I know. And it was one of the managers I dealt with didn't get up out of his seat when I spoke to him, which riled me. I also said, the whole setup in that gym, temporary gym, is not okay. It's on a tennis court, and I get you're doing your best, but I'm also going to give you some feedback that as somebody that is neurodivergent, that's an absolute nightmare. I didn't even want to come in here. You've got no mirrors, blah, 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 blah. I said, I don't see what the problem is. And I said, the problem is it's not very inclusive. Yes, it is. I said, it isn't. This is what I do for a living. It isn't. To which he said, he argued with me, and then said that head office said this, head office said that. And I said, but why are you not listening to what I'm saying to then be able to feed back? And it just feels now as if that whole feeling of not being bothered because people will just let things slide. They'll just let things slide just because. And so, like you said, do businesses think, what's the point? Because what's the point? Because it's not going to mean extra money. And the irony of it is that bigger companies, people aren't bothered about what the customer service is like. And yet smaller businesses, there's no way on earth that I would be able to do what I do with my business and say, you're going to pay me the full amount. Sorry that you can't access the platform fully. I'm improving it so it's better for later on. It just wouldn't work, which I find ironic that people tolerate rubbish from bigger companies that can afford that training, because it does come down to training. A lot of this does come down to education, or whether it is, like you say, people stay where they are because they're not happy, but they do it because it's a bit more money than down the road.
Well, I just think it's a lot of the wrong people making these decisions at the moment, and I think I'm going to blame a lot of people that are sort of financial directors and whatever. Come at me, but I think it's a lot of financial directors and people that push money and aren't necessarily aware of the other side of their business, the customer service side of their business or whatever, that are making these decisions. And I've heard these conversations in the past with the industry that I came out of, which was workplace assessments. I've had conversations with companies where they said, we would rather take the risk and be sued, right, than spend the money proactively making sure that we got it right in the first place. And you just think, wow. In a day and age where we've got cancel culture, in a day and age where social media is such a strong thing, reputation is and brand is so important. that's such a
But
risky
I think when they're at a certain level, it almost doesn't matter. When you hear and you see on LinkedIn, I'm sure it happens that people that have got so much money will just go and park on WO lines because they're not bothered, because they'll just take that bit that the fine. But after the conversation we'd had last week on the podcast, I think when you've got people that have got money, I think somebody was saying about the gym that I go to, they were looking to be bought out, the big chain, and they were in debt and all sorts of stuff, and the investors wanted to pull out or something like that. But I think the issue you've got is that when you've got the funders, so a friend of mine's got a business in Jamaica, they've got investors, it's been an absolute headache. And actually, she said in the end, and this was their baby, they've been doing this for 14 years, I've had everything against them. And she said, when we went to one of the meetings, it turned out the investors want to take it so that we haven't got a majority share. And she said, no, I'm not having that. And I said, no, because that's like them turning up for the party, the after party, having not done any of the work. And I think some of this is the problem, is that the investors are just purely looking at the profit at the end of it.
It's numbers.
They're not actually interested, and that's why training companies often, all too often, are, but they're just an investment from somebody, so they're not actually about education.
Yeah, I think so. So it's interesting, really, because there's with independent training providers, there's a thing because we get Ofsteded. So there's the argument of, well, we have to do certain things in order to make a good quality service for any student. And everyone says a lot of bad things about Ofsted, and I've had some interesting experiences myself. But without them, we wouldn't even have the baseline expectations of a good quality service to a student. So yes, there are issues in how they may present it themselves and that other argument. But as a structure, as a regulatory system, it works because it makes you do better. And when there's someone making you do better, you have to do better. If there's not, there's not. Like in gyms, I've no idea what's going on with regulation on there. Do you know what I mean? So anyone can invest and do what they want. But in education, regulation is key, but flexible regulation where you can still do what you want to do, but within a design system. It's that flexibility argument.
And wouldn't you say what my argument back when people challenge my desire to want to for people to be qualified, they'll challenge that and say, well, it's not for everybody. And I say, but why would you not want to show that you've reached the standard? Okay, that qualification might not be perfect, but change the way it's delivered, change things within it. Don't take it away completely. Look at the way that it's delivered, or who's delivering it. Because surely, as you said, not having anything is, when I look at all the other sectors where that they're not regulated, it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
And of course, then what happens is trainers do start. I know that if I put things out there on the internet to ask questions about trainers wanting CPD, silence falls, because that means them spending money. But actually, if they know that they can still keep making money just by doing a bare minimum, then
I think sometimes a lot of businesses, they just need to maybe make a little bit less money.
Absolutely.
And do it a bit better.
Yeah, and just value some slightly different things. I mean, we might be asking people too much, really, but I don't think it's too much to maybe just say, right, I'll take 5% less profit than we did, but invest that into staff and training that makes our service better and everyone likes us better. And that in the end improves our brand, and that brand gives us new people, and we actually grow by 10%. But because that feedback loop of growth in business isn't as quick with branding, they don't see the value in that, because that might take a long time for that to feedback through the system with branding. Whereas if you go, but I can spend that 5% on direct response marketing, meta ads, and I can make the same amount of profit. So you're not quite seeing the branding argument for it. And I think maybe if they understood that a little bit more. Branding's a bit of a weird topic, isn't it, really? No one really sees the direct results of it. You only see in the future what might happen to your sales and revenue, which is what they care about.
Yeah. It's such a minefield, but I think you're completely right there about this profit thing, and that's why I've sort of been advised to do various things before, and I've said, but I'm not going to compromise on my values. I'm simply not going to.
No, definitely. Can I just say, like, so I've been working in apprenticeships for like 11 years now, and they changed the standards and use this levy pot. I think that the levy pot in particular is a golden key that needs to be unlocked properly. So what we're just talking about there, right, is businesses seeing the value in training, right, for their workforce, and then the regulative Ofsted argument. Well, apprenticeships is both of those things. Yeah. We deliver apprenticeships, we're Ofsted regulated, we deliver a certain standard, right? Then the workplace, they get that value because they get better trained staff. And guess what? They're forced to pay into a pot for that training. We've already got the system. We just don't seem to want to use it. I hear stories all the time on LinkedIn that this gym chain has used their levy pot to give to charity, which is amazing. It really is. But why have you not used the pot? Like care companies, why have you not used your pot? Use the pot on training for your staff.
No, exactly. And actually, one of the other issues I'm seeing as well is that the people that work with the apprentices also don't know how even a bare minimum, and I'm still looking around to try and work out, it might be something I speak to you about, Harry, to try and find out if there's some way, because there should be some way of tapping into those people to even offer something. Because if I've got a son, he's not doing the apprenticeship, but many of his friends are. And I think, gosh, if they were given somebody that really had no interest in teaching a young person, the difference that young person is going to get is between them staying and not staying. I've seen it in the constructions, like the attrition rates are awful. And I had somebody a while ago that I was teaching, and he works for a bodywork company, and he was really, really good. He did the AT, the company sent him on it, and he said, I've learned so much from this. He was good anyway, but there was so much he'd learned about. A lot of it was the motivation bit, and about the fact he was working with apprentices that were young lads, a lot of them, and about how to get the best out of them. But he said, I wouldn't necessarily have known this stuff. So it feels like there's a missing link there, that there's a huge amount of money that's put there, that people are just, I think a lot of companies as well, or a lot of the training companies are just using that, but I think that should be invested back into that company.
Yeah, I think you're right, and so one of the, because obviously we know what funding we get per apprenticeship standard, right? So basically, what's happening is the government don't allow enough funding in the sort of banding system, whatever it is. So say you get a certain amount of funding, the way that they want us to deliver it and the length of time, all that kind of stuff, means that the costs have to go right down. So that means, so I'll give you an example of how that's affected. So if we run an apprenticeship program on bare minimum, we have to cut out certain maybe other qualifications we might have given to those staff members and also to the tutors. So if they gave us more funding, therefore use more of the levy pot, we might throw in some additional qualifications like AET, like some ADHD qualifications, some proper regulated ones. That'll make that staff member better. That'll make the mentors better, because we could even train the mentors. Yeah. But because we don't get enough funding pot from the levy, we have to run it on a more of a minimum. So if they just allowed us to increase that pot a little bit, using more of the levy pot, which seems to never run out because everyone seems to be giving it away, they would help us make a better quality training. And I think sometimes the bottom line for apprenticeships is too thin.
I think we need to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, thank you, by the way, for today. We have to go now. But if you've got a levy pot, talk to Harry and Marianne about it. Don't just sit there and say, I don't know what to do with that. Here's some people that will help you spend it wisely. Also, if you're worried about the quality of what you're doing as a business, again, talk to these people about training. All right, it will have an effect all the way through your business, from customer service all the way up. Education. I've just been schooled. We shall be back this time next week with more of the same. Until then, hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Harry, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.